So today we are going to talk about documenting processes using through the 4 key functions, and how to use the process tools to document a process really well. So to get to a process, there's 2 ways. You can go here through the 4 key functions, go to the key function that the process is in that you want to access, then select the process. That then takes you to this screen, which is called the Process Tools page. That's what we call it. It's called Process Tools because down below here, there are numerous templates that you have available to document the process with. The second way to get to a process is to access it through a job description that it's been linked to. So once you've built your job descriptions, you can go to a position on the org chart, and then from this job description, you can select this same process, and then it takes you right back here to the Process Tools page. From the process itself, you can always see which key function it's in and what subfunction. We call this the breadcrumb trail right here. So right through this trail, I know that this customer complaints process is in the client service subfunction and then the doing the business key function. This trail takes you back and forth from the 4 key functions also. So rather than clicking here and then having to click the key function, you could click here and it takes you back to where that process is. So it just saves you an extra click to use that trail. So this is where you can always see where the process is on the 4 functions. If you want to see which job descriptions the process has been linked to, you can click this right here, and then you can see from this outline, this is your organization chart, that this process is linked to these 2 positions. So again, this is called the Process Tools page, and it allows you to access these templates that you would use to document a process with. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of describe the functionality on the face of where we're at right now, all of this. And then we're going to get into how to document a work plan and what some best practices for that is. And then we're going to talk about checklists. Next week, we'll finish up with the rest of the process tools. I spend a lot of time on Workplans because this is the tool that is used the most. Almost every process should have a work plan. I'm sure there's some exceptions, but for the most part, every process should have a work plan because that is the overall step-by-step, holds all the details, has a complete explanation of what's done in the process. All these other tools like checklists, scripts, and so on are as needed. So if you need some quality control and you want a checklist filled out every time someone does that work, then you can use a checklist. If a process has a conversation in it or frequently asked questions, anything verbal, then you can use the scripting template. If it doesn't, then you just don't use that template. And then same for the rest of the tools. If it has a file or a form in it, or it needs, you want to build a custom form that's completed, if it has a policy, if you could possibly do a training video or an audio of the process, then you would choose to use those other templates. So first thing, this is called the details of the process right here. And I can edit the title of the process just by clicking. Most everything in TouchStone is click to edit. So unless it's a fixed title that you can't change, like you can't change work plans right here, so you won't be able to get rid of that. But anything else that is customizable, you can add or change. If you just click right on it, it'll open. And so I'm just going to hit cancel. Right underneath the title of the process is the objective. And those of you that have been in these sessions this whole time have heard me talk about this, but just quickly, this is the purpose of the process. I was working with someone who's new to TouchStone just yesterday, and they had listed all their processes in the 4 key functions and just wanted to show them to me and get some feedback, but they hadn't put any of the objectives in. So the consequence of that was the processes she had added, she was confused even a day later as to what she meant by that title. So defining it will help you to decide what's its purpose, what is in it, what's its overall result. Another thing that happened to her that objectives will solve is that she had redundant processes and hadn't really decided where a process would begin and where it would end, so that therefore got confused when she was adding another process title. So that's just a plug for filling in these objectives. Right underneath the objective field here, there are these two toolbar items. This box right here that says process documentation completed, this is how you turn the process title black. So when you're finished with the documentation, when you start to build it, the process title will be blue. TouchStone will turn it blue automatically. When you're finished with the documentation, it's good to go, you're ready, then you can flip this flag and it turns it black, the title. I'll just show you for those of you who are unfamiliar what that looks like. So here from the 4 key functions, this process title is red because there's nothing in it. This process title is blue because it has something in it. Somebody's documenting it. And then this is what it looks like when you flip that flag and turn it black. Underneath the process documentation completed, you can then access the make process public and available to all users. When you flip this flag or just put in this check mark, then TouchStone will put this process on the dashboard in the public folder, which is right here. So these processes always show up on the home screen, and they're meant to be processes that are company-wide information. So they would be things that all employees need to access and use. This process that I just put in here, customer complaints, is probably not a good public process because handling complaint is the accountability of 1 or maybe 2 positions, but it's not the whole entire company. So avoid putting processes in here that aren't company-wide. I see sometimes when I look at accounts, people have just made everything public, and I think there's a tendency to want to do that because then you can kind of see it right when you log in. You see everything that you have, and in your mind, you're making it easier for people to see things and find things. In the end, it's going to make it harder for people to see things and find things because this is just a list. If you reserve this for company-wide information and then you put the processes that each position is accountable for on their job description, so if I'm the customer service person and I log into TouchStone, it's going to be much easier for me to click once and now I see all my processes here. And they're all organized into categories, they're all neat, I can put them in a different order. You can see it's much easier for me to find and access what I need right here, as opposed to it being just in a big list here. And furthermore, you can't even tell whose accountability it is really because everybody's seeing the same thing. So I'm going to go back here to that process. Over to the left here are all of the process tools, or the templates. So let's talk about work plans first. To make a work plan, I click the title right here. So all the tools are the same. If you want to make a checklist, you click the title. Script, you click the title. And then you're prompted for the name of this work plan. So you put in the name of the work plan, and then you can define it. So this is the same idea as what I talked about being the overall process objective, that you want to think, what is the objective or the purpose of this work plan? So then you hit create work plan. If you ever see this, it means that you're about to add a duplicate title, a duplicate work plan title. So clearly I must have added this into my demo account somewhere else. So when you see this, just click this link, go to that work plan and decide, are you really adding a duplicate that you didn't think existed, or resolve the issue with the title. I'm just going to put another P here to save time, and then I go create work plan. So now this is the work plan will appear, and if you look to the left here, you can see this new work plan title is right here. So now I've got 3 total work plans in this process. Sometimes processes will have more than one work plan, and sometimes they'll just be one work plan. So how you know is you want to think, are there multiple things that happen while someone's handling a customer complaint? Are there a series of workflows that occur? Or is it just one thing from beginning to end? Customer calls in, complains, I go through the steps till it's resolved, that's it. So if there are multiple things that happen, then you'll have multiple work plans. If there's just one thing that happens beginning to end, then the title of the work plan, the one work plan, should be the same as the title of the process. There's no need to struggle for a different title. If it's just going to have one series of tasks beginning to end, pretty easy. Put that work plan over here, call it customer complaints, make the objective the same, and then write out the tasks. But if it has separate or numerous work plans, then those titles will need to be different, and you'll want to title them based on what that sub part of the process is. So that's another way to look at it. The work plans are like the breakdown of the sub workflows within that overall process. So let me show you another example that it's pretty straightforward, so I might let this sink in a little bit. So I'm going to go to running the business here, and I'm going to choose a finance process called accounts payable. So this overall process is called accounts payable, and in order to achieve the paying of all the bills, ensure all bills are paid on time in the company's interests, in order to achieve this objective, there are numerous ways that happens, that we pay bills. We do it by check, we do it by we create invoices, we pay things by credit card and ACH, we make check payments, we do deposits. All of this is related to paying bills. So those work plans are separate. They each have their own set of tasks, which achieve, in this example, the check deposits. So this isn't an exact science, deciding what's a process and what's a work plan within a process. It sometimes takes some consideration. If you ever feel like you need help with that, you can always send us a message in the Resource Center. Someone will call you back, typically that day, and just sit down with you and talk it through. So if you're ever struggling with, is this a work plan in a process, or is this a process, or is it both, then get some feedback if that's helpful. In the end, you decide if you like to see more things inside of one process, or if you like to see them individually as separate processes. Let's go back to this work plan here. So again, the click to edit pertains here. If I want to change the title of this work plan, click it, it opens and I can change it. Same with the objective, click, it opens and I can change it. So if I was going to start to build this, the first thing I'd do is I'd think about the purpose of this. So I'd think about the objective, the goal of it. Where, in other words, think, where does it start, what happens in the middle, and where does it end? So if I'm thinking about where it starts, then I add a task, click Add Task, click Open this task, and then I type in the first step. Then I save it. Then I hit Add Task, click Open the task, and then this is the second step. Step, task, action, it's a step that an employee would take to move forward onto the next. If you start writing in paragraphs or with lots of bullet points and you notice that your tasks are maybe 5-10 sentences long, that might be an indicator that you're not thinking of step by step, but you're more telling a story about what's happening. So when you're documenting, you want to think step by step by step. Imagine that you're in the seat of the person learning this, and they're learning how to perform these steps or actions. The clearer you can be, the better. And if you break it into step by step, then it's going to be easier for someone to follow it. This toolbar here is very similar to most word processing that you would see. A couple things I just want to point out here. We do have a hyperlink tool, which is right here. So this allows you to hyperlink to anything that lives on the internet, another web tool, a website, a page inside of another web tool. And then you can also hyperlink to things inside of TouchStone. So to make a link, you just highlight the words that you want to become the link word. You go here to this sideways chain. Then you hit the link type drop down, and then you see all the different types. An external link is something that links to something else on the internet. So if I hit an external link, I would put in the complete URL of that page that I want to link to, and I hit insert. Then these words become the link to that page. All these other things are items that are inside of TouchStone. So I could link to a whole other process from this task. I could link to another work plan from this task, to a checklist. What things to look out for with hyperlinks: if you have a process like this one and you've created some scripts in it, it's got some forms in it, it's a good idea to reference those in the work plan itself. So I could say inside of the task, call the customer and use the providing a solution script. Then I would go see the script title right here. Then I'd go to scripts because I want to link to that script, hit the drop down, and then these scripts are all in alphabetical order. So you go to that particular script and then you hit insert, and then this becomes a link to this script. Why this is useful is in the work plan, if you're referencing the other tools inside the process, then it gives people an idea of how they use those tools. So if they're to fill out a checklist every time they handle a complaint, then you could say the last task of the work plan could be, after every complaint, fill out the checklist, and then you link to it. Another way these hyperlinks are useful is to show the relationships between your processes. So if I go back to link here, if in this task I need information from another process in order to complete this task, then I could hyperlink to that other process. So let's say in this task we're entering information into the CRM. Rather than repeating the steps of how to enter that information, because the entering of that information into the CRM, or let's say it's a lead, entering a lead into the CRM. Instead of repeating the steps of that inside of every process that it happens in, I would create one process and I would call it entering leads into the CRM. And then everywhere else that somebody has to perform those steps, I would hyperlink it to. So here I'd go to process because I'm looking for a process on how to enter the leads into the CRM. And then I find it and create a link to it. I'm just going to choose that one for fun. And now when someone clicks this link, they can go to those steps of how to enter the leads. Again, how this is useful is, let's say you change your CRM and you need to completely redo how the leads are entered, or you innovate it in some way and you want to change something. If the steps of how to enter those leads into the CRM are in 5 different work plans all across TouchStone, well, then you have to update them in 5 places. If you've made a link from a process to those work plans, you change it in one place. Another thing I'll point out here in this toolbar is the image uploader, which is this tree icon right here at the end of the row. The tree icon allows you to insert an image. Wherever your cursor is flashing is where the image is going to appear. So if I had left it here, then the image is going to appear to the right of this text. So just pay attention to that. Wherever your cursor is where the image will appear. And then I hit this little tree icon, and now I'm browsing my computer looking for an image. I don't know if I have one or not. Images can be screenshots. They can be, and I won't do this because I don't have a good image, but they can be JPEG or GIF files or PNG files. find them in the choose file, hit insert, and then that image will load into the task. It's easy to take screenshots and then use those pictures in WorkPlans. You don't need to do a print screen and then insert the whole screen. Use your snipping tool, and everybody's got one. This is the one that's built into a PC. I'm sure Macs have their own version of this. So I would just hit new right here, and let's say I wanted to reference this toolbar here. I'm taking a little snippet of this, and from here, this one's a little messy, but I can circle things or I can underline things. Then I would just go File, Save As. I always save these as capture on my desktop. And then the next time I take a screenshot, see it's asking me if I want to replace it, and I say yes. So I'm overriding each image every time I take a new one. There's no reason for them to be littered all over my desktop. They're in TouchStone, so I don't need to save them really. And then it also makes it easy when you go to insert it, because you always know you haven't saved it as anything, so you always know what you're searching for. You just hit choose file. You don't even have to go to your desktop, and then you just type in CAP, and there it is. You can use the snipping tool inside of a Windows PC. It will always save it as capture, but you can save it as whatever you want. And then you just hit insert, and then there's that little screenshot. Once it's inside of TouchStone, you can resize it just by dragging it in or dragging it out. You can also then, if you hit enter, then the text line, so I can put text underneath or above the image. And then when you save it, this is what it looks like. So anytime you can take a picture, then definitely do, because you can see if I'm trying to tell someone, go to the view deleted. See how easy that is? I don't even have to write that out. There's less writing you have to do if you're able to take pictures like this. Under the tasks in a work plan, the second section here is called expectations. So the tasks are the actions, they're the steps, they're the step-by-step. Expectations are anything else you want to say about the work plan that isn't a part of the tasks. That's just an easy way to think about it. So an expectation could be something subjective, so some quality. It could be timing, so when something's done. It can be a why. I know I'm spelling that wrong. It can be why something's done a certain way. I like to call this context. So what's the reason why the steps up here are so important? This really helps for training, and it really helps for management. Because if your employees understand why something's important, then oftentimes it changes the way that they view it. So anything extra like that you want to say, then this fits into the expectations section. If there are no expectations, then you just leave this section blank. What I like to do is once I've documented a work plan, I just think about it and say, is there anything extra that I do here? Sometimes the expectations are the difference between just doing it and doing it really well. So just consider it. Spend a few minutes, think, are there any important expectations? All the tasks are drag and drop, so I can drag up, drag down to reorder these tasks up and down. I'm just holding my mouse click down and moving them up and moving them down. The tools themselves are also drag and drop, so I could take these work plans and shift the order around like this. Again, most everything in TouchStone is drag and drop. 4 key functions list, things on a job description, everything. Let's talk for a minute about this toolbar row up here. First icon you see here when you're on a work plan, and I'm on a work plan, I could see it right here. This is the convert to checklist. So with one click here, okay, I can take a work plan and turn it into a checklist. So all TouchStone's done is take the tasks of this work plan up here and built them into a checklist. So we'll talk more about checklists here in a second, but that's what this icon is for. This next icon over to the right, this allows you to move a process tool from one process to another. So if you've built a work plan inside of a process, and then you decide, well, I want to combine two processes, or I want to take one process and make it two, then this is a way to take any of these tools in here out and move them into another process. So I click this Move Process tool. Now when I hit this drop down, I'm seeing all my subfunctions from the 4 key functions list. So these are all the subfunctions. So what I'm doing is looking for the process that I want to move this work plan into. So I'd go to the subfunction where this process lives that I want to move this into. Then I hit the drop down here, and then these are the processes that are in this subfunction. I choose the process I want to move it into, and then I hit save. So now you can see that work plan is gone from this process, and it's actually inside of that other process I chose. If you do this quickly and then you go to that process you think you moved it into and it's not there, I had this happen the other day. It happens every once in a while. Someone will message us and say, my process disappeared, it's just gone. And I know that that's literally impossible. So 9 times out of 10, they've moved it and then don't remember where they moved it to. So a quick way to deal with that is just to go to the search up here and just search for it and you'll find it. So this is Move Process tool. This icon, this arrow pointing to the right, this is our print or export feature. So with this icon, I can print this work plan, I can export it to Word, I can export it to a PDF, or I could email it. You know, those of you who've been in the session for a while have heard me give my speech about printing things and even exporting things. So do it for a good reason. When you export something, print it to Word, save it to your desktop, now you're creating another version of it. And the benefit of TouchStone is that everything in it is up to date at all times. So try to embrace the paperless environment. Try to embrace it. Try to let go of feelings like I got to hold it in my hand, I got to pass it to them in their inbox, it's got to be on paper. So embrace the cloud atmosphere where things are not printed. So I'll give you an example. If you have somebody working on a work plan for you and they say to you, the work plan's done, I'm going to email it to you. And they go here and they email it to you. Or worse yet, they print it for you, attach it to an email. Or they print it on paper and then hand it to you. They've created another version. So teach people to do something else. Teach them to go to the work plan. So I want my manager to look at this work plan. I'm going to go up here to the top and I'm going to copy this URL, right-click copy, and then I'm going to go to my email and I'll paste the URL into that email. I'm going to say, go look at the work plan. These are the things I did to it. And then all my manager does is click that link. As long as they're logged into TouchStone and have access to this, they go right to it. To the right of this export arrow is our archive feature. So the archive allows you to keep versions of your process tools. So this you might want to keep versions if you want to have someone update something, but then you don't want to forget what it used to look like. Some of you are in industries where you deal with compliance, legal things, audits, where you have to show how something's changed. That's another reason to use the archive. A manager who wants an employee to change something but is nervous to have them go into TouchStone and just start moving things around, you archive it first, then have them change it. So to archive, you just click this little black box icon. So if I want to archive this work plan, I just click it, and then I say OK, and now you'll see the screen bleep, and TouchStone has taken a copy of this and put it into the archive. Simple as that. Then I can go here, view archive, and then when I hit the drop down here and I go to work plans, I'm going to see this archive version. It'll give you the date and time that it was archived. I can restore it by clicking this. I can just go and look at it and view it and compare it to this if I want to. So that's the archive. There's no harm in archiving things. You're not going to slow down TouchStone, and there's no consequence to that. So archive things. when you have any residence about changing it. Another thing that's commonly archived are library processes. So this is a library process right here, this customer complaints process. And let's say that I really like these customer complaint guidelines, but I want to change them a little bit. But I'm kind of hesitant to do it because I don't want to forget what it used to be, because I might want to go back to that later. Just archive it. Archive this tool, then you can change this all day long, and you never have to worry about not being able to remember what it was before. Each tool has an archive. So if I go down to the script, you're going to see the same archive button. Let me go back here. This is the delete. So this delete X will delete whatever tool is behind you right here. So if I'm going to delete this checklist right here, I would just go to this X, and then I say, it says, are you sure? And then I say, okay, and now that checklist is gone. But it's not actually gone, because everything that you delete from the process tools page goes into this big trash bin, and you can access it when you hit view deleted. So I just hit the drop down here, and I would go to the script, because that's what I deleted that I want to look at, and then here's all these deleted scripts. Again, this does not slow your system down by having this trash bin here. It's just a safety mechanism to make sure that people don't accidentally delete things and then can never recover them. Only administrators can delete also. So if you have someone who's a create or edit user that's on a process, they won't be able to delete anything. They can't delete from the 4 functions. They can't delete tools. Only administrators can. All right, so let's talk more about how to make a good work plan. So there are 2 types of work plans here that I'm showing you. This one is called Customer Complaint Guidelines. This is an example of what sometimes is necessary, where you just want a list of guidelines or expectations or suggestions or ways of thinking about things. And these aren't tasks, they're just things to know. So if you have information like that that's regarding a process, you can make a separate work plan for it and call it Customer Complaint Guidelines, Customer Complaint Expectations, and then just list out the, like this is done. Another place to put information like this is in the document tool. So the document tool is like a blank Word document. So I could just create a document here and then cut and paste this into it also. Or you can have it as a work plan like this one is. This second work plan down is called Customer Complaint Processing. And there are a few things going on in this work plan. This is an example, and I built it this way on purpose. So I just want to point out some things that I've seen people do and explain to you why it's better to do it not that way or a different way. So first thing is, this is an example of a sentence after sentence after sentence. So this first task, whoever wrote this probably thinks in pictures, is a storyteller, and when they write as like a story. Well, there's nothing wrong with that kind of writing. It's just not great for work plans, because like I was saying earlier, you want a step-by-step. You want clear, specific tasks. And when you look at this, I can read this, but my mind is reading the story, so I can't really follow it all that well. So I might remember what these sentences are all saying together, but it would be very hard for me to follow it and kind of see what's here and then also remember the first. So here's another way. You see, if you write like this, then think of doing bullets. So you can easily take sentences like this one that says, gather the following information, and then I can just create these bullets out of these steps with this icon right here. And everywhere there's a comma in this list, just break it down into bullets. You can even do sub-bullets. So this is the indent right here. You can see I can do a sub-bullet of a bullet. And then when I save this, you can already see how it's easier for your eye to follow it. So if I'm learning this, this is a list of things I need to do because I'm gathering the following information. So if you have anyone who's written tasks in a work plan and they look like that, just read that paragraph and try to break it up. Even putting a space between things can be helpful. So if you have like 2 sentences in a row, even going to it and then just stopping it somewhere and doing that can help, because your eye can kind of see it a little bit easier and better. Another thing to keep in mind is try to have people writing tasks in a uniform way. So if I'm like a fancy, flowery person who loves emojis and loves things to be underlined and bolded and turned red to emphasize, that might be fine for me, but not everybody writes that way. So one person's work plan might look like this one, where you've got some capitalized, and then I want to emphasize this, so I'm underlining, and then I'm bolding this, and then I put this red. Another person's going to write a process and not do all that. So I think simple is better. Stick with normal writing convention. So definitely do bullets and sub-bullets. Try not to capitalize everything. Try not to underline. If you are gonna have like a certain way to emphasize something, then require that of everyone. So if you, because you're the business owner or the manager of the department and you really like, things, the adjectives to be turned red, well then have everybody do that. Even simple things like whether you're going to use an ampersand like this one or you're going to spell out and. These are things that may bother some people and not others, but just in terms of overall consistency, I think it's important to just discuss with your team how you're going to write things and if you're going to use emojis or not. This right here is an example of the hyperlink idea. So this says if the employee issue if it's an employee issue or simply a job that was not done well, try to resolve using the providing a solution script. And then this is a hyperlink to this script. Here's another example. If this is a warranty issue, follow the warranty and guarantee policy. And then the policy is right here. Here's that entering things into the CRM example. Enter flags and actions into the CRM. This is a hyperlink, and if I click it, it's going to take me to this process here called CRM How-Tos, and this is a link to the CRM describing how to enter flags. So this whole process, CRM How-Tos, has got these different work plans in it, which are the training on how to use the CRM, and then inside of every work plan where someone needs to enter these flags or actions, then you just make this hyperlink. And it goes to that outside process. Here's a complete the checklist daily, and this is a link to this checklist. Here's a couple examples of expectations. Every customer complaint will be heard in the professional intent to resolve. Whenever possible, every complaint will be resolved in 24 hours. That's the timing idea. Listen to the complaint. Stay calm. Be respectful. So these are all subjective kind of qualities, just things to know. So number one thing I would say about work plans is when I'm looking at a work plan or reviewing it for someone, typically what I see is that there's not enough detail. Not always, but for the most part, there's not enough detail. So try to put in as much detail as possible. You're going through this effort of documenting your processes. You want them to be done well. And with the result being that somebody could follow this and understand how to handle a customer complaint. Now, the written out documentation isn't always enough for someone to fully learn something. Sometimes they have to practice, they can watch a video, whatever it is, but get as close as possible. So how you determine if there's enough detail is this. Think about the minimum qualifications of the person doing this work. So if I'm hiring a customer support person, maybe I say that they have to have a bachelor's degree or some 2 years of college, definitely a high school diploma. Maybe they have to know how to search the internet, how to use Microsoft Word products. They have to have a year of customer service experience. They have to know how to use a phone. I don't know. You decide all that based on your recruiting and hiring. You recruit and interview and vet that person thoroughly. That's really important. Then you teach them the process. This work plan goes from those minimum qualifications forward. So I don't need to explain how to create a Word document here or how somebody fills out a checklist really, or anything that they should already know based on their minimum qualifications. So build it from that point forward. So having said that, the more qualified the person is, usually the more you have to pay them, but the less your documentation needs to go as far as teaching. So let's think of like a doctor example. If I hire doctors for my lab, I'm hiring them based on the fact that they have been to college and have a doctorate. So I don't have to write processes on how to be a doctor. All I need to do is write processes on the way that I do it. What's important? What's the routine? It doesn't have to have all the complexity of how to be a doctor. So think of your own version of that. Think of the minimum qualifications, and then that's going to help you decide what's enough detail and what's not enough. Also think of the clear step-by-step. Even the most complicated of things can be broken down into a clear step-by-step. It takes some patience, it takes some thought, but it can be broken down. So let's talk about checklists next. To make a checklist, same as the work plans up here, I just click the checklist title, and then I'm going to put in my checklist title. Hopefully I don't have one called this already. So put in the title of the checklist. You don't necessarily have to put checklist at the end of it, like the customer complaint checklist. Because it's here, and I'm just going to hit create right here, I know it's a checklist. When I look at it, I know it's a checklist. So sometimes people want to put the word checklist or script or form at the end of the titles of all of these. You can do that if you want, but it's not necessary because the checklist is right here. Another thing people do is they'll put the word process at the end of every process title sometimes. So this would say customer complaint process. That just becomes really redundant because every title and every process you add will have the word process at the end of it. It's just unnecessary. So you see the checklist built right here. I would go add checklist item, and then this title is what shows up right next to the box right here. So this is the checklist item, and it's bolded and will show up next to the box. And then this is the further description. So if you want to say more details about how this is done, then you can use this description area. And then I just hit save, and then it looks like this. So first checklist item, then I click add checklist item again. Same thing. This becomes like the second box. If you don't add a description, then this field, it will look like this on the process tools page here, but when you use it on the dashboard, this empty description won't appear there. So checklists are used for quality control, they're used for management purposes, they're used for an employee who is doing something very complicated and needs to remember what they did, what they've done and what they haven't done. It's for quality control, for quantification sometimes. So not every process needs a checklist. For sure it doesn't. Only use the checklist when you're fully intent on having the employee fill that out every time they do it. So that should be your guidepost for this. If you want this filled out every time somebody does a customer complaint, then build a checklist. If it's just something, that you think might be interesting, but you don't really see the reason it would be done every time, then don't use a checklist. If you do it this way, then when your employees see a checklist, they're going to know that you really mean it, that is something that should be filled out. It has to be filled out, and you can really manage it and hold people accountable to it. If you over checklist things, then they lose their meaning or importance. Sometimes checklists are good just for the training of an employee, and then maybe they're not used every time after that. So this is where the convert to checklist really becomes useful. So I can go here, click, okay, and now this work plan has been turned into a checklist. And maybe I want my new employees to fill out this checklist every time they do a customer complaint for 2 months. And then once I'm sure that they really get it, then I can delete this checklist, or I make it so I tell them they don't have to fill it out anymore. So that's fine, new employee training. But other than that, if the checklist is here, require people to fill it out. Okay, I'm going to delete this checklist. So someone's asking about using the checklist. So I'm going to show you that before we end today, how they're used on the dashboard. But one thing before I get to that, you can use checklists on the dashboard, and that's what this person was asking. I'm going to show you that. But in addition to that, they can also be printed. And I know that, for some industries or people, there literally is a need for a clipboard with paper on it. So if that's the case, the export feature here will allow you to export your checklist to a PDF or Word, and then you can print those all day long and have them on a checklist. Having said that, the checklist can be completed on the dashboard, even on mobile devices, on phones. And it's something that's commonly used on the dashboard, these checklists. So I'm going to show you the checklist feature and how that's used on the dashboard, and I'm going to do that in conjunction with a couple processes that I want to highlight from our library. So this is the customer complaint process that we were just on, and just so it's not confusing, I'm going to take it out of the public folder. Or maybe I didn't. So the customer complaint process is here. This is the one that we were just looking at. When you download this customer complaint process from the library, it's going to look cleaner. Mine just looked, jumbled because I was trying to make a point about what not to do. Then we have a process called reputation monitoring. Reputation monitoring is the same as customer complaints. It's just the internet's version of that. So in a normal customer complaint, how we all would like it is if someone called us and said, hey, I have this problem, can you fix it for me? A lot of people don't do that. They do this instead. They go onto the internet, onto Yelp, wherever, Facebook, and they just leave you a bad review. Same thing. So that's why these two, I think, go hand in hand. And then we have this one, customer satisfaction. So these three processes, I think, are integral to being able to make sure that your customers are satisfied and that you're gaining the most knowledge you can about how your service could be better and making it better. Process documentation is great for this because if I get a customer complaint, as long as it's a valid, reasonable one, I could look at that complaint or that problem and I can figure out what caused it. So I could look to the scheduling process. I could look to the clocking hours process. I could look to the inspections and say, well, that customer was unhappy because we showed up late 2 times in a row. Why are the technicians showing up late? So I look at scheduling. So read into the complaint. Michael Gerber, for those of you familiar with him, he calls this fires burning. He calls it the key frustrations process. You have a frustration about something, there's always a system or a process solution. A complaint should be a frustration. It's a fire burning. And if you don't put that fire out, if you just kind of put it out and then move on to the next thing because you're so busy, it's going to rear back up again and again and again. So by reading the process and deciding what is the real solution to this and adding that, creating that, you're saving yourself money, because these fires that keep coming up over and over and over again, those are just costing you money and time and frustration. So this customer complaint process, this one is kind of built for a production company, but you can modify it and make it work if you have a service business as well. Just simply a step-by-step how you handle the complaint. The complaint comes in, what's the first, second, third thing you do? A script is integral in a process like this. What do people say and how do they say it? So you can have like a providing the solution script, a frequently asked questions, some kind of a form that gets filled out. So this is a custom form. You may have a production management software that already does this, some kind of a form where it's tracked and followed. Most important thing about a form like this is to capture the follow-through with it. So when the customer complaint comes in, what was the solution and how can we add that back into our processes? I'm going to go here to the dashboard just to demonstrate these three processes. So this is what I simplified the dashboard here and just created a customer service position. So if you have a customer service person and they were to log into TouchStone and it was all these processes were there for them, this is what it would look like. Very simple. When an employee is not an admin user, they don't even see the 4 key functions here. It just makes it easy and simple. It doesn't have this added complication of this, which is really done by an administrator or a manager. They can access the org chart, but they don't necessarily see the positions that they don't have access to. So when I click this control panel, then I go to my processes. So they're all organized nicely by different categories. And then I see here are the customer service processes. I'm just going to pull this to the top so you can see them. So if I'm a customer service person, I get a customer complaint, I can go here to this process. I can follow the work plans. If there's a custom form in it like this, I can fill this out. I can put this as the customer's name and save it. So this is someone using the dashboard to fill out this form and follow the customer service process. Reputation monitoring, it's the same idea. You can download all 3 of these processes from our process library. If I go to reputation monitoring, I see work plans here, which is how to set up monitoring software, how to do reputation monitoring, how to do reputation management. There's a checklist in here. So maybe once a week, it's my job to go and there's a list of free software right here that can help you manage your reputation online. So you could go to that and implement one of these software tools, and then you'll get notifications when people are putting in reviews about you. So maybe once a week, I have to go here to this checklist, and then I tick these boxes off as I do it, and I save it. So now my manager knows that I went and through the reputation monitoring checklist and reviewed everything. There's some guidelines here on customer interactions on social media. Here's a list of customer review sites that people might go to. This one's nice. It's examples of how to respond. So with the employees have to put a written interaction back to someone who's made a complaint or even said something positive, then they can have a list of that they can cut and paste from right here, like, you know, if they want to use some of this text. And this is all customizable. It's stuff that once you download this process, you want to go in and actually customize and make your own. So it's important to look and see what's being said about you on the internet, and then have an employee who's responsible for checking that and then responding. I think it looks really bad when a company doesn't respond. Even if the customer is wrong, having some type of response, I think shows that you're being attentive towards it. So if a customer is complaining about something you've done or not done directly towards you, or they're putting it on the internet. Then that gives you an opportunity to respond. What's bad is when the customer doesn't complain. I mean, if you really think about it, what's bad is when they don't complain, because then you never know and they just kind of go away. So there's this, inside of this process, there's some examples here just to kind of show the importance of this. I'm just calling this client satisfaction statistic examples. For every customer complaint, there are 26 other unhappy customers who have remained silent. The probability of selling to an existing customer is 60 to 70%. The probability of selling to a new prospect, 5 to 20. You understand the reason why making your customers satisfied and happy is so important. It's costing you money when you don't. This one I love. 96% of unhappy customers don't complain. However, 91% of those simply leave and never come back. I never do this because I think it's valuable for business owners to hear about my experience of them. A dissatisfied customer will tell 9 to 15 people about their experience. Around 13% of dissatisfied customers tell more than 20 people. You can imagine, and you can see what that's true. A cost is 67 times more to acquire a new customer than retain an existing one. So this is just the reasons why implementing a process or processes like this are so important. So with customer satisfaction, a process like this is meant to help you check in with your customers because of these statistics we just read. 96% of people just go away and don't say anything. But if you're calling them, then you might find out stuff that you didn't know about how your employees are handling things, how you're handling things, how it comes across. Surveys, this goes through a couple surveys, satisfaction surveys, and actually gives some surveys that you can use. Surveys are tough because a lot of people don't fill them out. A phone call is not that much time, and I think it's really worth it because of these statistics. How much money it's costing you to get a new customer and replace the one that you lost. Think about that. So given that, is it not worth somebody's time to pick up the phone and call a selection of customers, every customer, leave a message, hey, how did it go this week? Even if you offer a long-term service, how are things going for you? Especially if a project is over, calling them up and saying, how did it go? No, I want to hear about it. Tell me. If they say something negative, then you're back at one of these two processes. Customer complaints, where we're going to satisfy and handle it, or reputation monitoring, which these two things result in improvements to your business. But the other side is, if you call the customer and they're like, oh, everything was great, I love your company, love your employees, then you ask for a Google review. You all know that organic SEO is driven to a large degree by Google reviews, particularly on Google. So if somebody's happy, why not say, have a 3-step process for them to do a Google review for you? So you're going to win either way with this by putting the time and attention into this. You're going to win by learning what you can do to make things better, or you're going to win by getting positive feedback, testimonials from your customers. There's a custom form in here. It's called Client Satisfaction Survey. There's also examples up here in the Workplans. So you can have an employee right here inside of TouchStone when they call, and some of you may have a CRM that you can already do this in, but if you don't, then you can do it right here in TouchStone. You can have a form like this, and this might be wrong, this form, but you can edit this and make it your own. So the employee calls the customer, says, how'd the job go? And then they fill out this form. If there's a complaint or something that needs to change, then you fill out that form of this message, and then it gets saved back to TouchStone. So then my manager, the customer service manager, or the service manager, whoever my manager is, would run a report, get a list of all of the satisfaction surveys for the week, and just review them. Either it resulted in a Google review, or it results in something that manager needs to change about the process. Those processes that I was just reviewing, they're in Doing the Business, in the library right here. So every function has its own library. These three processes, which are related to customer service or client service, are here in this library. And you can download them there. That form I was showing you, these are the client complaints form here. If you want to edit that, you just click the form. So here we are in the custom form tool. And I can just click and edit any of this. So I could change this just by selecting it. I can delete that and make it something else. If I want to change this, I just click and you see it opens and I can edit or change it. And then you can add new things, new multiple choice items, or you can add drop-down questions.